Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to some EVE Online, and this is the first video with the Abyss expansion on a TQ that I'm making. So I'm sure you guys thought that we would be neck deep into the Abyssal Dead Space buckets by now, but if like me you're a Care Bear and you actually want to get there on your own, it's not that easy. I spent my first evening looking for data sites, hoping to get a first tier 1 filament. It just never dropped, and I must say I spent more than 3 hours looking for those data sites. In fact, I feel like I didn't do that badly. You can see that I've got quite some drops, including some shattered filler wheels that I grabbed from some ghost sites. We've got quite a few decryptors here as well, some token loot and stuff like that. But unfortunately, there were no filaments to be spotted in around 12 sites, I think, at least 30 or around that number of containers. So what I'm going to do, of course you do want to get into the Abyss at some point, is I'm going to head towards a place where I might buy them. I found that on day 1 of the expansion, you could say the first day after launch of the expansion, which is right now at the time of recording, prices have already dropped to like 30 million for a tier 1 filament. And I was also watching Marky Dragon run the stream when it comes to Abyssal Dead Space Pocket. He received a filament from someone, and it basically confirmed that unless you're very unlucky, once you get into the Abyss, the drops will sustain you for more Abyssal filaments. So basically at some point, you're very likely to just want to make the investment for a first filament and get going from there, try to grab them from the Abyss rather than look for data sites where they might drop. Now we're still going to explore a little bit on our way there. Who knows, maybe we might get lucky. I've also read that there were some bugs when it comes to the drop rates and the drops of these filaments. For instance, the Goristas got absolutely none of them because of a bug. So maybe CCP has intervened, and if we get lucky, we might find one on our way there. So this is basically me sharing the very first experience of what I've been doing after the expansion hit. And that's been exploring 4 data sites, trying to find those filaments, which I have not done just yet. So we'll see. If we get to Amar, we'll take a look at the price. Otherwise, I'll take a quick trip to Jita, since 30 million. It's probably still way too much if you think about how all of this works. Now you'll get tier 1 and tier 2 filaments most likely between 1 and 2 for every tier 1 site or dead space bucket that you run, and so it is really going to feed itself, and the supply from the data sites are just going to be extras that eventually will really no longer be needed to sustain the player base that actively runs the Abyss. So these are going to become extremely cheap as time goes on. But the novelty is here. I've read that at first there were some crazy prices going for, like, trying to sell them for like several billion ISK when the first few came to the market, and then quickly dropped off to like 100 million, and after 24 hours, a bit over that, we are already down to 30 million. But yeah, it's quite an interesting launch so far. I personally do like what CCP has done here. Give the data sites something extra to look forward to. It's probably never gonna be worth that much ISK after a while, but it also meant that, a type of content that was not seen too much, not run too much, actually got some nice attention on the first few days of the Abyss. It was in fact rather funny. I found a couple of those covert sites, those ghost sites as well, and luckily I'd experienced those before. I noticed the music changing, and then I noticed the filler wheels that were in the drop list, in the drops that I got there, and so I knew that I really should not stick around too long there. I always did one container and then get the hell out, because I was running them in this really untanked chip that's designed to try to get the hell out of there. So just a quick Helios that I put together. But I noticed in the help channel that some people were getting caught off guard by these ghost sites, because if you stay there too long, not only do you have the explosion from the self-destruct of all the cans there, you also have the spawn that will scram you, keep you from warping, so you'll take the full brunt of the explosion no matter what if you stick around too long. And some people apparently didn't know that that's how the ghost sites worked. and either lost their ship or got very close to that. So yeah, always be a little bit careful. If you're seeing covert or if you're seeing sleeper cache on a data site, you know that there is some risk involved there. Also, something that I obviously noticed, oops, this is just a wormhole, so we can keep going. Lots of other people doing the exact same thing. So here is an Astero, and that was just the name of the game. Lots of little exploration frigates in almost every system that I was exploring in. So the competition was absolutely massive. But of course, if you get lucky and you can get started on your with your first tier 1, you can basically use the Abyss to create more of those, and at 30 to 100 million a pop, of course, that's really not bad for the risk and effort that you're putting in. So it made a lot of sense that people are and were really rushing towards those filaments, trying to get in on the gold rush there. Maybe the guys that did the right way, I would say, or the best way, the most Eve way for sure, are the people that I read that were actually hunting all of those explorers that decided to try their luck in wormhole space. So I'm pretty curious if a lot of people finally found a data site in wormhole space, got a filament, and then got blown up by the Cloaky Proteus that was waiting exactly for that to happen. So yeah. A new event, a new expansion, new content, it always brings a lot of interesting stuff on the first few days here. Of course, it's all going to generally settle down, I think, but we've also seen the first reports of people losing quite expensive ships in the abyssal sites as well. Lots of Gilas being lost, lots of Ishtars as well, and that's something that I was personally a little bit afraid of as well. The Gila with the passive tank, generally speaking, it's a great ship for PvE, one of the best combat ships that you can find for the content that's like tailored to it, combat exploration, things like that. But in the Abyss, you can sometimes encounter some real problems. Look at that here, another Astero just still going. It's yet another wormhole, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's go to the next system. And that has been the experience yesterday, although I must say 3 hours, something like that, and still more than a dozen data sites. I felt like I did quite okay, and loot-wise, I got 30-35 million of loot from that session as well. So I don't feel like it was a complete loss. I was actually quite surprised by how good some of the loot was in these abyssal sites, including the PPCs that you saw there. Those are not even calculated in the earnings that I had during that run. And so basically I feel like I've earned enough ISK to afford to buy an abyssal filament if it costs around 30 to 40 million ISK. So we're just heading for Amar to see if we can find one at that point. But very first thing, of course, there's still a lot of people asking, how do I get into the Abyss? Well, you need to get your hands on a filament. You can either get those from data sites throughout New Eden. I saw a blue post in help that it's really all data sites that have a chance to drop the filaments. But know that from my experience in HiSec, the drop rate is very, very low, because I found none in 12 plus sites and at least 30 hacks done there. So another cosmic signature. So, but with a Griffin and an Astero, yeah, there's definitely competition out for any data site at the moment. Let's see if we can see what VOF 256 is. If it were a data site, then it would confirm that they actually dropped from HiSec. That would be great, by the way, if any of you guys found a filament from a HiSec data site. I would love for you to post that in the comments just to confirm that we are not wasting our time running these data sites that have the green core, so the easiest core in the game. Normally it should drop them, but as I've said, I've not seen it before, and my suspicion is that the easiest sites, so the green cores, have a very low drop rate, and then yellow and red cores each will have a higher drop rate potentially of those filaments. And so if you want to improve your chances maximally, I think, yeah, wormhole space is probably going to be the place to be. In order to do that, is it worth it to do that too extensively? I personally think that once you have a first filament, there's going to be a very high chance that you will be able to sustain your activities in the Abyss just from that filament, because of the drops that I've seen people mention when they ran their first few sites. So I think that's also the idea, to basically have a bit of a counterbalance to, well, if RNGesus does not work with you and you get zero filaments dropping from too many sides so that you end up with zero. It can happen, but it should probably just be a small minority. I suspect that the average will actually be between 1 and 2 filaments for every run in Abyssal Dead Space. So we have another signature here. Let's take a quick look at what that is. And so yeah, this is what I've been doing. And for alphas, at the moment, you know, you see Asteros around, you see lots of exploration frigates around. It makes sense to actually hunt for those, even if you're not ready for the Abyss yourself. If a single item goes for 30 to 100 million ISK, that's definitely worth the effort, and it really explains why. Like, here's another Imicus that you saw right there. Now the people are really trying to get all those data sites done, and so seeing what's happening here on those gates on my way to Amar, I personally must say, I think for the more veteran players, it makes more sense to just make the investment of that first filament and try to go from there. So we are now in Sarum Prime, which is empty. So let's go to Amar, let's dock there, and let's take a quick look at the prices for filaments. And if it's worth it, if it's not too expensive, I'll buy it right there. Otherwise, I'll take a quick trip to Cheetah and buy maybe 1 or 2 of them, get back, and after that, I'll start making my way in the Abyss. I also, you know, I watch Marky Dragon, so I do have a little bit of information on what I've seen drop-wise. He did a tier 1 and he got the skill books for the battleship and the frigate. I think that's very important. He also got lots of, what was it, of the materials needed for the production of the Triglavian ships and modules. Seeing that drop so extensively in the tier 1s, I think it makes a lot of sense. Because that way, on the farmable tiers, we'll basically be able to grab the skills and make Triglavian ships and weapons and ammo and things like that from there. But if you go into tier 3, tier 4 and tier 5, you'll have a higher chance to actually get to Mutaplasmids and thus be able to go the RNG route. So I think that's what we can expect when it comes to that. So if you go to the market then, just look for filaments, and the calm ones, of course, here still costing 84 million for the dark filament, 50 million. Then we've got the exotic still at 70, Firestorm at 82, and the Gamma at 85. So definitely still twice as expensive to even 3 times as expensive as Jita. So that means for me it's gonna be worth it to do the extra 9 jumps, pick up a couple that are currently being sold at 30 million and get started that way. I'm not going to explore my way over there, but know that the first thing that I did when the expansion hit, and we are immediately scanned, of course. There's always people ready to blow you up. If you, like, for instance, move a dozen filaments, they'll happily blow you up, of course. That's happening as well. All that activity is attracting quite a bit of attention. So I actually have to be a little bit careful in Cheetah as well, but it'll all go very well. And yeah, my first steps after the expansion have been to hunt for a filament, but turns out that the drop rate is pretty low, and I think you're better off just buying 1 or 2 from the market at this point already. That's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.
Drive active.